My name is Anthony Burokas. I have a production company in Dallas, Texas called IEBA Communications, and gave much of this talk last year, revised for this year, talking about video mixers. And I had a discussion with someone on the floor who says, there's switchers. I says, well, the difference is you're going to get a rack mount box that will switch between inputs, like a 16 by 16 router, that switches. A video mixer mixes, dissolves, wipes, picture in picture. It does a whole lot more. So there's a slight differentiation, but everywhere I go, you go on B&H or whatever, they're called mixers, they're called switchers. But for those who are particular, you can call them mixers, like I do. Little background on me. I've been in the production industry for quite some time. I spent 15 years working on a cooking series for PBS, where we used a number of video mixers because we would do multicam live to tape, 3-camera, 4-camera. We did it on location in a restaurant school. We would do it outdoors when we did a grilling episode. And we would set our live to tape stream in many different places. This is a corporate office at Merck Pharmaceuticals, a training facility, and here we had the Panasonic audio video mixer. And this studio was actually set up so that on the right-hand side you can actually see the audio mixer, even though there's an audio mixer as part of the video mixer. They actually put a 16-channel audio mixer right next to it. And I have a talk on audio mixers later today. And right after me, AJA is coming in. Aja, AJA, however you like to say it. This is one of our location setups. Here we're using a Data Video SE300, I believe it is. And this is a 4-channel audio mixer, 4-channel video switcher. This is an SD switcher, back when people did SD. And this was a training seminar. We did live to tape. We had prompters, we had everything, but it was sort of done as pseudo live, but also scripted. Another situation in a different office, 4 cameras, and the switcher and the control room was outside the office. But again, this was for training purposes. So part of it was scripted, part of it was not, because we're trying to instruct people on how to do different things. This is an event, an award ceremony for Texas Roofers Association. So we were in Cowboy Stadium. We used their big LED screen, and we were using a Panasonic mixer in this case. I think it's the HS400. And the cooking series that I was telling you about, when we moved to HD, we went to the Data Video SE1000. Audio was not part of this mixer. We used audio separately. And this went straight into a Blackmagic card, which was recorded in the computer. So this allowed us to punch, in this case, 3 different cameras, but you can see we're outdoors doing a grilling episode. And this is the setup up on the house of the property that we were using for the shoot. And then this is another cooking on location where the school wanted us to set up in their little cooking area, showing off their equipment, because there's great partnerships between cooking schools and the equipment they use, whether it be, I don't know who did cooking schools, but the grills that they use, the ovens they use. There's a big partnership there, so they wanted to show off their stuff. So on me, I'm a video producer. I'm not a salesman. I don't work for any of the companies that I'll be talking about. I don't have a partnership with any of the companies I talk about, so I'm not here to sell any particular product, just talk about them as I've used them, as I've experienced them. I'm not a product rep, so I have no vested interest in it. There are other products out there that I'm not aware of. I'll make that clear now, because there's no way that one person can know every single product unless their job is to sell. And lastly, there are other features available in many of these products that, if you're going to be an expert at one product, you can't be an expert at all products. If you really know the Anycast, you're going to spend a considerable time to learn every feature of the Anycast, in which case you're not going to know every feature of, let's say, the vMix. It's just not really what I would do, because I'm more involved in production. So people always ask me, well, what mixer should I get? You know, I need to mix multiple cameras. What mixer should I get? I tell them, get this one. Handles everything. I mean, it's a good answer, isn't it? We'll circle back to this one, but realistically, I realize that people who are getting into streaming, you have a lot of different price points. So what I did for this talk was I sort of stopped at a lower price point. I'm not including this, you know, level of mixer in my talk primarily. So let's start at the bottom. There's the ATEM, or the ATEM television production studio at $995. When this came out, it was sort of like, you know, pond ripples came out from this thing because it really disturbed the waters. To get an HD video mixer was, you know, several thousands of dollars, 10,000, and then this thing came out for $995, and it was like, what? You know, and the way they can do that is all the hardware is built in there, but all your control is external for this box. There's, you know, really nothing on the face of it. Can I go back? Yes, I can. There we go. So that's at the base of this. There's also, if you're going to deal just with SD at the $1,000 price point, Data Video has one that does audio and video. I mention SD mixers because a lot of the webcasts that I do are still SD. And then in certain cases, I have clients that hand off the video to a large company called On24, and then they take the picture of the person talking and they put it in the upper right-hand corner at 320 by 240. So there's not a lot of call for them to say, okay, let's get the HD mixer, let's get the, you know, anything like that, because even standard def is going to be smushed down to within an inch of its life and smushed up in the corner. And a lot of that is because they're dealing with issues in that a lot of people, when they're watching their corporate webcasts, they're behind the VPN. So all the data is going through their corporate servers, and their corporate servers are not set up with a lot of these CDNs out here. They're just doing this in-house, and so they're trying to minimize the data rate. So they'll do this tiny little video window. The slides are cached and they're vectorized, so they're dealing with a 300 kilobit stream going out. So that's their goal. They're working within their market. Next step up is the ATEM 4K. For $1,610, it actually had a price drop since I did the talk last year. And this is a very nice mixer. One of the nice features I like is, in terms of minimizing the amount of data you use, you can lower your frame rate. This is the first one that I find at this price level that will do 24p. That'll switch 24p. So you've got a camera that does 24p, you can mix 24p, you set your delivery to 24p. You're not doing 30, you're not doing 60, you're not doing interlaced. You know, so it's a clean signal and it's 24p. Right around this point, you also have another SD mixer, which is the Roland. I have to look at the thing. I think it's the 5X, I think it is, or 3X. Heavy audio control in here. I mean, it really looks like an audio mixer that they added video to. And in many cases, audio is a tougher thing to handle than video. I mean, if you can get the signal into the mixer, and you can punch 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and then you can deliver it. This also has USB out, like he was just talking about before. This is USB out, so then you can feed it directly into a laptop. But then the audio control, normally you're adding an audio mixer next to your video mixer. This thing has it all in one, and like he was talking about the VR50, the 50, it's a touch screen, so you can actually switch using that tiny little screen. If you were hard pressed, if your monitor got damaged in shipment or whatever, that you can actually make a go of it with just that mixer without adding a big multi-view, although it does provide multi-view out. Next one up is the ATEM 1ME. So this gives you more layers, the ability to build like a picture-in-picture before, you know, so you've got your main shot, and then you've got a picture-in-picture, and then you can dissolve to the picture-in-picture. So it gives you an additional master and effects bus. Next one up is another Blackmagic product. This is their 2ME, and it's 2 rack units tall, and it's $37.95. And you get an amazing amount of capability in this thing, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Next up is the live stream. They've actually come out with 2 hardware products now, and their low-end product they've limited to SD delivery. which, as I said, there is a market for just SD delivery. So you get the live stream software. It'll interact or interface with the live stream control surface, but it's an SD mixer, and $37.99 is actually a really good price. Next up is the Panasonic for $39.50. So you've got audio and video in one box. I've used the SD version of this. I haven't really used the HD version of this. A lot of people are moving to the ATEMs, I find, in most cases. It's HD. Sorry, yeah, that's the HD. That's actually, I think, a newer version of the HD, so there's more capability in it. The first version, I think, was limited to every single thing coming in had to be the same format outside. Now this one, I believe, is format agile, so you can feed it a 720 and a 1080, and it'll be able to figure things out. Next up is another data video project switcher. This one is HD, but they've added the audio mixer to it. So it's like the SE1000, this is the SE2000. Next up is everybody's, the one everybody knows, this is the TriCaster, their 40 model for $5,000. But does everyone know about the new Mini? TriCaster came out with a new model called the Mini, which I'll talk about in a moment as well. This one is HD, but it's component analog input. So if you can still find a component analog output HD camera, which are fairly rare at this point. Next up is the Sony. I think this is, what is this, Sean, the 8M?
Yeah, MCS 8M.
And also audio and video in one, very capable mixer. Next up is the Paladin, right at 5,000. I don't know why that Sony got ahead of it. Oh, I added one to this slide, so the whole order got messed up. The Paladin, I'm actually using this in the streaming media producer booth to do 3-camera live switch, and he talked about it a little bit before, so I won't sit on this one too long. Next up is the TriCaster Mini at $6,000. Now they've got two different models. One has an LCD monitor built in. I really don't see much of a need for it, so I would just mention this one. It's the $6,000 price points without. The difference between this model and the $5,000 model, this one's all HDMI. 4 HDMI ins, 2 HDMI outs, and 2 analog audio in and out. And that's basically it. So if you're dealing with some, your basic consumer cameras, this is, you save a whole lot of money on your cameras because you can just jack them directly into this thing. Next up is the Roland, and if you had a chance to play with this at the Roland booth, it's really a nice mixer. The audio controls are very nice, the video controls are very nice, and one of the things with their SD mixer, which I reviewed years ago, I said I didn't like the fact that when you added a graphic or a title or a picture-in-picture, it popped on. There was no real way, it just came on. And in this mixer, you can adjust the dissolve, the rate at which it dissolves on and off. It's a global dissolve. So if you're dissolving your sources and then you want to dissolve on the graphic, it's going to be the same speed. The only time they separate is when you want to do a wipe, if you're George Lucas, and you want to do a wipe between all of your video signals, then it'll still dissolve your graphic on and off. It won't wipe the graphic on and off. And I thought it had an alpha channel keyer because the keyer that they've been showing in the booth looks so good. And he says it's just a Luma key, but I was really impressed by the Luma key. It's not an edgy, really bad edgy looking thing that I've seen on some of the basic mixers. Next up is the Livestream, the high def model for $7,600. And I added the vMix, which is out there in the booth, just because it's a really capable piece of kit. I mean, you can get the live stream, but then you got to bring the monitor, and you got to add pieces to it. So you're going to be adding to the $7,600 cost. Whereas the $9,950, you just put it down on the table, put your keyboard down, hook things in, and go. So it's it's at a lower price point because it's giving you more than the other ones are giving you because it's got the big screen in it. All right. So let's talk about each one of these a little bit more in depth. The ATEM Television Studio uses software. So you need a laptop connected to this device And I worked with a company that was building a little fly pack, and they put the ATEM in there, and they put a power supply in there, and they put something else in there, and they said, that's the rack, that's going to be what travels. And I says, well, how do you talk to it? He says, well, we'll bring this laptop. And I says, well, how are you going to check your feet? Well, we'll bring this laptop. I don't know, why don't you just build that into the rack? Put a little drawer in there with 2 laptops in it. It doesn't make sense to, if this has to be there to control the ATEM, it needs to be part of the kit. Or build a little embedded PC with a pull-out monitor or something, because it's 945, but it's not 945 because you always need something else. And Sean has used this a lot, and he says, how many? 8 laptops can talk to this thing?
6 or 8, yeah.
And so you can have one laptop doing video, and then you can have another laptop doing audio, and they all connect over Ethernet. And so you can have multiple people handling multiple features of the ATEM mixers, and each person is a dedicated operator, but they're still all interfacing with the one piece of hardware. So you don't have to lug out 18 pieces of hardware. You can all do it within the one piece of hardware. Unfortunately, I think these are all still single format. They're not format agile, so everything has to be the same format going in, which is, I think, easier now that most cameras are format agile. External, that's where everything else happens. Your streaming is external, your recording is external, your playback is external. So this is not one of those units that has built-in playback, like the TriCaster, like the software-based machines. The laptop, oh yeah, I have a 6 down here. Then you have the 4K for 1610. This one, you get some control on the face of it, and you have a program monitor on there, but they also have the control surface, which is 4745. And if you're coming from a broadcast background, dealing with a software interface and mousing around is a very difficult thing to do. You're used to being able to watch the program and just have your hand on the keyboard and punch, 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 preview, mix. You're like driving a car. I'm not mousing around to control the steering wheel as I drive. I'm driving. I'm watching what happens, and I'm driving the car. I don't have to look at the pedals, so scroll over to the pedals, scroll it up a little bit. I'm not doing that. So for me, a control surface is a fairly important thing. For other people who are new to this and don't have that experience and legacy, mousing around on a screen is easier. Plus, the multitude of computers coming out now with touchscreens also change the game a bit too. So if you have a laptop with a 17-inch touchscreen, you can punch the touchscreen. Again, it's single format, progressive ready, like I was saying. So if you want to do 24p, this is where you need to go. Again, external, your streaming, recording, and playback are all external services. So whether this will actually talk to the Blackmagic recorder. So in the interface for the switcher, you can actually tell it to start recording, but it's still an external box you need to hook up. And then, like I said, with the other ones, laptop with free software, and you can do all of your control for this box, but it also gives you some on the face. This is the one you have, right, Sean? The 4.
One of the 2 that I have.
This is the VR3 from Roland. That I'm just going to keep throwing it at the Sean, because you did the review or the talk about this one for streaming media, and I look at this as a pretty darn good audio mixer built in with a video mixer. And I wouldn't necessarily be doing picture-in-pictures and very big titles and things like that with this, but the fact that you could actually handle, a small panel talk with audio going through this device, and you wouldn't need to hook up a separate Mackie or something like that next to it, is pretty nice. And if you need to travel a lot, if you're following a corporate seminar or a corporate junket, this thing is a very nice piece of single piece of equipment that bring along with you. But again, it's SD only. It doesn't do playback. It doesn't do recording. So those are external devices. The back of it, you can see that it's got HDMI in, but they're SD HDMI, except for the one computer input, which can come in VGA or HDMI. And it will scale that down to SD. There's all the bullet points that I just talked about. It's NTSC or PAL, not NTSC and PAL. Frame sync on all your inputs, and the USB out that goes directly to the computer. It has 250 wipes, but I don't know many people who use a lot of wipes except for George Lucas. And it says 18-channel audio mixer, but if you look at the inputs, it doesn't seem to have 18 audio inputs. That's because many of the audio inputs are coming over HDMI. So if you wanted to actually have 18 channels of audio, you'd be plugging a lot of microphones into the cameras to get it into the mixer to control it in here. And it has the built-in multiviewer, which used to be this big expensive thing. Oh, did you get the Miranda multiviewer for $5,000 and then hooked it up to your monitor, and then they started being built into the video switchers. And I think that's a huge advantage because it's like one monitor, preview, program your sources. It saves a lot of setup time and a lot of weight as opposed to like one, composite monitor for each of your inputs. Then you have the 1ME, which is all SDI except for, I think, one HDMI in. NTSC, PAL, HD, Ultra HD, 4K, 10-bit. I mean, it's a very impressive mixer in terms of what it will handle. It does the 6G SDI, which is sort of Blackmagic's standard. You're not going to find a lot of other companies that are, you can't go to the Aja booth and say, oh, I want 4K over a single coax, because that's what Blackmagic has made. It's not a SMPTE standard, and until it does, I don't think a lot of other companies are going to, go through the engineering to produce a lot of products for it. But fortunately, Blackmagic also makes the converters. Tri-Sync, Blackburst, so if you're doing iMag at the same time, having Blackburst that you can sync the camera and the switcher to saves you from having to use the frame sync and the mixer, which speeds up the ability to get the video on the screen. You get less delay between what's happening and what's on the screen. You got 10 frame synchronizers if you're not using the Blackburst. Multi-view monitoring in HD, program outs, you can pick what you want it in. 4 keyers, so you can have, you can start layering things up with it, and a 12-channel audio mixer. So very impressive little mixer. And of course, I should also note that the software that controls it works on both Mac and PC. Then you have the 2ME, which is a bigger unit. It's got more hardware and much more capable. Same as the 1ME, plus 20 inputs. 2 independent multi-view outputs, 4 upstream, 2 downstream keyers. It's just sort of like awesome sauce with nuts and chocolate and everything on top. 22 input audio mixer. So I would normally say you really should have a control surface for this mixer, but this control surface doesn't do everything that this mixer can do. You need the bigger control surface for this mixer to really access everything that this thing can do. And while the box is only $37.95, the control surface is $14,000. So it's a huge step up to really be able to leverage the capability of it fully. But in terms of what you're competing against, if you were to go over to Sony's broadcast video mixers, still, this is quite affordable for what it's giving you, including the control surface. I have a difficulty calling something that big just a control surface. You have the Live Stream Studio, which is this little box, comes with a specially mapped keyboard and a mouse, 3 selectable HD SDI or HDMI inputs, multi-view display, web encoding is built in, recording is built in, streaming is built in. It's live stream, so of course. It has USB ports for audio digitizers, your effects, your titles, transitions, and downstream keys are all built in. Comes with a keyboard and mouse. And they also have a control surface. And their control surface, I don't know if anybody's seen it, I got a chance to play with it a little bit. It's actually quite impressive because it's a dynamic control surface. So it has a row of controls coming down the middle, and depending on what you're doing, if you go to audio, then these become different settings like feedback, EQ, 3 different EQ ports, and clipping, and gate, and things like that. And then if you go to, I'm going to do video, they all change to video. So you have independent physical controls for different things, but they're dynamically changed based on what you're doing on the mixer. which I thought was pretty nice in terms of giving a tactile control. You know, let me go over here and I know what these buttons do. I don't have to look at them. I don't have to read them. I'm just going to turn this knob because I need it smaller. So that is a nice thing. Next up is the Panasonic. This, you had asked, which model is that? It's the HMX 100. These are nice. They have two unique features. Lots of inputs and outputs, all balanced audio, SDI, multi-format video. So when their description says multi-format video, that says to me that it will handle different formats coming in. Dual SDI input 3D. This will talk to another video mixer. So I've never done 3D. I've never webcast 3D. But by what I can gather, you took two of these, talk them together, connect your cameras on the different inputs, and switching one switches the other. 12-bit internal processing, so it's got a lot of capability in terms of actually massaging the video a little bit in the mixer. 7 video inputs, 6 video outputs, 10 audio inputs. And one of the things, it doesn't have a lot of buttons to punch your video. There's a shift button. That little button on the left is a shift button. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, shift, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if you're used to having all your inputs, immediately, I want to get to camera 8, camera 1, you have to think in terms of what are my 4 most used and what are my 4 or 5 least used. You have to, because you've got 2 different banks. So that's something to be aware of with this one. Audio level in, and it has the multi-view. The Data Video SE2000 for $4,000. I think we've seen a few mixers below this price point that offer quite a lot of features. So this one coming in at $4,000 sort of strikes me as not as progressive as some of the other ones. XLR ins, SDI ins, also has there's a DVI in and out. 3 HD SDI, 1 DVI-D, switchable input, multi-viewer with digital clock, 4 input audio mixer, is just a 4 input mixer, It's just 4 video inputs. So already it's sort of like, well, why wouldn't I go with one of the other ones that offers me more capability? In terms of panning, in terms of EQ, none of those controls are here. And in my experience with the SE1000, the built-in keyer was not very good, very bad. It's just a Luma key, and the clipping, the edge is very, very poor. It supports audio follows video, so if you want to cut to the camera on the field, you can have the audio from that camera come through, which is nice. Luma key, like I said, it's not very good. Next, the TriCaster 40. Version 2. They added some new capabilities to it, but again, it's analog in, not a digital in. There's no SDI, there's no HD SDI, there's no HDMI. 4 analog inputs, but you can do composite. If you're doing, standard def, this would actually be a pretty good mixer to get. On-screen previews with audio meters. You can share computer screens, and they've added AirPlay. So if you have a wireless access point on the same network, you can now access AirPlay on your TriCaster. It's a playback, it records, it streams, it's all in this box. You could switch between 14 video channels. Now, it's not really 14 inputs, but it's the virtual inputs, the iPhone, the AirPlay, laptop on the network. Those are part of those other inputs. So it's really just a 4 video camera input, and then everything else is more virtual. And of course, you get their virtual sets, and they're really good chroma key as well, if you've ever had experience with that. And they have a control surface that is, fairly comfortable to work with. Next is the Paladin. It's basically a Windows PC in a box with, as he said, video card in there. My video card on the one I'm using in the exhibit hall has 4 normal size BNCs as opposed to this one, which has the mini BNCs. And the normal size BNCs I greatly prefer because I don't need to worry about adapters. This will also take wireless devices, an iPhone with the correct app will come in here as a source. And the software I'm using in the booth is Wirecast to mix the cameras. But when I talked with them, they said you could use Wirecast or you could use Livestream. It's a Windows box, And then you could use it for other things as well. You could use it to edit, transcode. For HDSDI FireWire, you can feed USB inputs. You can have IP camera, a web camera. So if you want to cut to the person behind, hey, yeah, we're here. It's not limited to 4. The capabilities are limited by your streaming software, Wirecaster live streams. So whatever you're used to with using those software packages, that's basically what you get with this box. You can record internally, stream, and output your mixed video as well. The Sony MCS8M is Sony's entry into this fray. Although they don't have this one at the show, they have their Anycast Touch at the show, which is, I think very impressive. Although the price point, it came down to around $15,000. But again, I used the original Anycast, and I was always like, I wish I could record in the box. I wish I could play something back. Well, all that's been built into the new Anycast. So the new Anycast is a much more capable unit. This one doesn't record, doesn't play back. It's basically video switcher, a broadcast video switcher, and a broadcast audio mixer. And I believe it has the ability to control pan, tilt, zoom cameras with that little thing up in the right corner. So you can set a few presets, and then before, when you call up a camera on the preview bus, you can then say, go to speaker A, go to speaker B, go to speaker C, and it'll zip over there, and then you can punch to it, which is a very handy capability to have. 6-channel audio mixer, built-in frame synchronizer, multi-viewer, which is fairly standard, and if something doesn't have a multi-viewer at this point, I'd almost rule it out. SDI with embedded audio, and this will handle the embedded audio, and ports still images via the USB port, but it's not really a playback device. Has presets, has effects built in, and has an aux mix as well in the audio board. Next, we have the Mini, which was just announced a little bit ago. This is a tiny little $6,000 box, very small and very light. And the first thing I thought of, why doesn't it have a handle? Put a little handle on top. It's so small. But they don't have a handle on any of their portable mixers, so I guess that's par for the course. 16 channels, again, with the TriCaster, it has 4 HDMI ins. So the rest of those are networked, virtual, things like that. You can hook in Skype and have Skype appear as a source. So if you have somebody remotely, they can just come in, and it's right there on 7 or wherever you want to assign it. So that's very handy. It's a compact design, supports up to 1080p 30. It has the multi-track audio mixer, although they don't have a control surface for audio, so you're doing that in the computer. I hear Avid has a control surface, but I haven't actually seen it. So there's a hook in with an Avid control surface for this, but I haven't seen it. 2 HDMI program outputs. There's also the interface and multi-view comes out the computer side. So you have the video side coming in with the 4 in and 2 out, and then you have the computer side as well. And a big now is social media publishing. So when they were introducing this, they talked about how you could have a show going on, you can take a clip from your recording, mark it, and then push it to Facebook. Which I felt, okay, well then you got to have a second screen, because the person who's punching the show is not doing that too. And this one, they have different price points with different storage drives. One model has 1 drive, one model has 2 drives, but it'll work with external drives as well. Again, because it's a TriCaster, all the effects, the titles, the virtual sets, the 3D, the scoreboard data, and all that stuff is built into this unit as well. And it works with the 40 control surface, even though it technically has 1 more channel than the control surface does. Next is the Roland, which came out just last year. And they were hoping to get one, are we going to have one at Streaming Media West? And this year, they're everywhere. I think this is a really nice solution. It includes a lot. It's $7,500, which in terms of what it gives you is not a lot of money. But maybe for someone just starting out in streaming, it's a pretty big price point to start with. But the really nice thing with the Roland stuff is you feed it whatever you want. You want to feed composite on one channel, you want to feed HDMI on one channel, you want to feed SDI on one channel, you want to feed a computer on another channel, and then you just punch between them. And it has 4 inputs, but then while one input is up, you can quickly, with I think it was 3 taps, go to your preview bus, change inputs on the preview bus. Now it's not SDI, now it's HDMI, and I'm going playback from something else. And so there's a lot of flexibility in terms of the playbacks. And when I was at the booth, he also showed me how you could use the picture-in-picture, the next 2 graphics buses as sources. So it's 4, but you could squeak 6 out of it if you needed to, or at least 5. And of course, the audio mix is very capable. I especially like the fact that they've built in a gate in there. So if you have a panel of speakers and you have all these mics open and you don't want to have feedback in the room, you could actually set a gate so the mic, that channel will be cut off until the person leans in and talks to it and gets above the gate, and then it'll open up that channel. So you can leave your faders up and not have to worry about having 5 faders up in an open room that's echoey and feeding back in. So that was something that many audio mixers don't have, and it's built into this. So there's certain features in this that are quite impressive, I think. The back of it, you can see, it's got your HDMIs, your DVIs, your SDIs, your AES, your EBU, your MIDI, your USB. Did I miss any acronyms? VGA. There's always something else. and there's this IEC on the very right-hand side. That's the power port. 12 audio inputs. Not all 12 are active, but you can quickly switch between them. 4 video are active, plus stills. It does not have video playback, but it has a still store in there that if you can get them in via USB stick or capture things live off of camera. 12-channel audio mixer, touchscreen preview, and you can use that. It's a pretty nice sized monitor. I mean, I wouldn't say it's good in terms of judging your video signal. Is it clipped? Is it too bright? Is it too dark? It's not really good for that, but in terms of in a pinch, I need to quickly assess something, it's good as a backup. Multi-view output, streaming USB out, full raster PIP, and 4 layers for composites. So you can have this picture-in-picture, this picture-in-picture, and then a graphic over top of it, all coming from this box. And independently, you can bring them up. So that's very cool. The live stream is the next one up. That's their big box. They've gotten into packaging their own hardware in addition to just offering the software. So this one, sorry, it got cut off. I guess the font changed on this computer. Multi-bit rate streaming. Let me fix that. No. Oh. Text. There we go. 5. There we go. 5 HDMI, HD, SDI. They're also, because it's software-based, it's flexible in terms of what you're feeding it. So you can have 2 laptops and 2 cameras. It doesn't care. Multi-bit rate streaming encoder, because Livestream has got the back end as well, so they know how to build these things into a much larger box like this, because Livestream also has the small, do you know what the model number of that is? The small little box that, it's basically put it down on a table, put your video in, it spits out a stream. Nice little box, but this is sort of like much more capable than that. 1080p 30 or 25, I60 or 50, although I really wouldn't recommend interlace on webcasting anymore. 2 graphics layers. The keyboard and mouse is included again, and you can use the control surface with it. Obviously, the control surface has more to do now that you're dealing with more inputs and outputs, and this is HD. So I want to talk about things to consider when you are looking at getting a solution. What type of, how much do I have? I have a minute? I have 5 minutes, okay. And right after me, like I said, the gentleman from AJA is coming in. He's going to talk a little bit. Are you dealing with SD, HD, 4K, a mixture of things, computer inputs? The more diverse your source is, that sort of determines what product you need to pick, because certain products won't handle that. Other products will. Are you coming in with SDI, like from broadcast cameras? Are you coming in from HDMI, from consumer cameras? Are you doing networked devices, IP cameras? That again will start whittling away what products you can use. Do you need just the mixer because you already have recorders and playback decks and things like that? Or are you sort of just getting into this and it's like, well, I don't have any of that, and if I could get that all in one box, that would save me a bunch of money and connecting it and disconnecting it and forgetting it and things like that. So again, you're whittling down what's the right thing for you. Do you need it to be idiot-proof? This was when I thought, when I was talking to one person, because he was using it on the touchscreen. The live stream was on the touchscreen. And I said, well, that's actually pretty easy, because then you can, if you're at a church or something like that, you can, hey, sit down. Okay, when the preacher talks, hit this one. When they start singing, hit that one. It's pretty easy. Whereas if you sit them down in front of Wirecast, it's a little bit more difficult to understand what's going on. Or the broadcast ones, here's camera 1, here's camera 2, here's camera 3. There you go. That will help determine which product is the best thing. You don't want them to, in a software thing, click in the wrong place and now the switcher's in the background, or it was minimized and what did I do? And then lastly, do you, like me, like to keep your eyes on the production and not really work on a computer screen, Like the Paladin was talking about, oh, well, we have a tablet and you can punch on the tablet, but then I'm looking at the tablet. I'm not looking at what I'm punching. That to me was like a complete non-sale. It's like, yeah, but you could go like this. It says, yes, but I need to know what's coming up next, not what just happened. So that was that, and I believe that is the last slide I have, so it timed out very well. Are there any questions?